Hey listeners, David Sisco here, he, him pronouns. Welcome to the podcast. If you tune in on a regular basis, first of all, thank you for that, appreciate it. You probably will remember that I often start with some sort of preamble to my interview with a guest based on the episode's theme. Well, this week there's no preamble, and I don't mean this in a self-deprecating way. I appreciate my own worth, but I think it's best that we skip the salad and get right to the entree. I have a very special guest, and I'm sure you're eager to hear what he has to say. I know I am too. Also today we're going to talk about leadership, both within academic institutions and arts organizations, and this is a topic that I just personally can't speak on. So, off we pop. It is my pleasure to introduce today's very special guest, Dr. Isaí Jess Muñoz, who is an executive arts leader, internationally acclaimed tenor, and sought-after educator and voice teacher. He serves as chair and artistic director of the vocal arts department at Boston Conservatory at Berklee, where he previously served as interim dean of the music division. His leadership has advanced academic innovation while cultivating strategic partnerships with organizations including Boston Lyric Opera, Boston Baroque, Sparks and Wiry Cries, National Sawdust, and Sphinx Organization, and leading institutions across Europe and Asia. As immediate past president of the National Opera Association, he guided the organization's 2024 to 2029 strategic plan, strengthening governance, innovation, and national service. As a teacher and mentor, his students perform with major opera companies and orchestras worldwide, on Broadway and national tours, and as faculty at leading universities and conservatories. As a performer, he has appeared with the New York, Los Angeles, and Israel Philharmonics, New York City Opera, and at Lincoln Center, with recordings on Sony Classical, Decca Gold, Albany, and Naxos. Jess, welcome to the podcast.
It's such a pleasure to be here with you and with the audience today.
I met you at Marble Collegiate Church back in the day when we were singing there, and got to know you and your lovely family. And so it's great to have been witness from afar your amazing trajectory as a teacher and an administrator. So I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today. Thanks for making time.
Sure, absolutely. It's an honor to see your trajectory as well. I'm just wowed by everything that you're doing, David. So congratulations.
Thank you. So as I mentioned in my introduction, for you, you serve at some very high level leadership positions, both within academic institution and within an arts organization. And I'm just curious about what kind of called you into those leadership roles.
Well, that's a great question. I mean, it's interesting because I think if you had asked me 25 years ago whether I envisioned myself serving in these kinds of leadership roles, I probably would have said absolutely not. I never set out thinking, oh, yes, I want to become an administrator or I want to become the president of an organization. In fact, very few leadership positions in my career are ones that intentionally pursued. More often than not, what happened was that someone approached me and invited me to consider serving. Looking back, though, I realized that leadership has been a thread throughout my life because even as a child, I found myself finding excuses to organize projects at church, directing talent showcases, leading theater activities in school. And I really didn't think of those experiences as leadership at the time. I just
Sure.
really loved bringing people together around something really, really meaningful. I, I don't think that I would have defined it as such at the time, but looking back, I think that that's what it was. By nature, I know that I've always been deeply curious. I have a lot of memories about how curious I was about various things, whether it was understanding vocal technique, preparing an operatic role when that time came, producing performances, figuring out how to solve all kinds of complicated problems. I've always wanted to understand how things work, and more importantly, how they can work better. And that curiosity naturally evolved, I believe, into leadership, because leadership, I I feel at its core is really about helping people solve problems together. When professional leadership came along or came into my life, I think that the people who invited me saw qualities perhaps that they believed would serve their organizations well. Often people ask me, well, what would you say some of those qualities are? I think in most leaders, most effective leaders, you're going to see things like persistence, resilience, certainly optimism, empathy is a big one, and really just a genuine commitment to people. And I'm just so grateful that others saw something in me worth trusting, because it's been an incredible ride. And one other thing that I'll say is that I've learned that I've learned along the way that saying yes is just as important as knowing when to say no. Earlier in my career, I accepted opportunities because they challenged me to grow. At this stage, I would say that I'm much more intentional. I've declined several leadership opportunities because for me, um, the title is not enough. The mission has to resonate, and the people have to inspire confidence. The organization's values have to align with one's own. And sometimes declining simply has to do with the timing. That was certainly one situation that I dealt with. It just wasn't the right time. So when I accepted the opportunity to help launch the International Baroque Academy at Music Theater Bavaria uh, several years back, it was because I believed in the people leading it. I really trusted the board. I believed deeply in the transformative power of international study for young artists. I had experienced the study abroad experience myself. It totally changed my life. Um, my experience at the National Opera Association was really similar. From the very first conference that I attended, I felt welcomed and I felt encouraged and seen as a young teacher. A lot of young teachers often when they enter the field, they don't feel seen. And that was an organization that invested in me right away, long before I served on its board. And then over time, I I guess what birthed inside of me was that I just simply wanted to give back to a community that had given so much to me. And my hope since joining the board has been that every member leaves feeling that same sense of belonging. And then I think the same is true for Boston Conservatory, where I now serve. One fun fact is that I auditioned there as both an undergraduate and graduate student. And I was fortunate to be accepted both times, but then life ultimately took me elsewhere because of financial aid and scholarship opportunities. But I always carried an, I would say like an affection for the school because I was so impressed by it and for the city of Boston itself. But I never imagined that I would eventually return, not as a student, but now as the chair of the vocal arts department. So in any ways, that feels like a full circle moment. Um, I think I'd say that there's just this common thread through all of those experiences, and it's that I've always said yes because of the people. Um, Organizations, they don't inspire us, people inspire us. And when I believe in the people, in the mission, in the possibility of making a meaningful contribution, those are the opportunities that have shaped my career and continue making leadership feel, I would say, like a privilege rather than just a responsibility that you've signed up to do.
Yeah, or just a title, as you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that. You've held a couple different positions at at Boco. From 2023 to 2025, you served as interim dean of the music division at Boco at Berklee, and currently, as you mentioned, you're the chair of vocal arts. Can you explain how these two leadership positions are similar, kind of in function, and how they're different?
Absolutely. Well, first, it has been such a tremendous privilege to serve in both of those capacities. I originally joined Boston Conservatory as the chair of the voice and opera department, and since then we've seen a name change to reflect the comprehensive nature of that department. So now serving as the chair of the vocal arts department. But then about a year later, during a period of administrative transition here, I was asked to step into the role of interim dean. And it was an opportunity to serve the institution during a really important moment. And I'm so grateful for the trust that was placed in me at that time. The two roles actually have a great deal in common because at their core, they're both about helping people flourish.
Hmm.
Whether you're leading a department or an entire division, you're investing in students and you're supporting faculty and you're building healthy teams and solving all kinds of problems and really working to empower people to be able to do their best work. Where I would say that the role differs is more in their scope because as a department chair, I'm very close to the day-to-day life of our community. I work directly with the students, with the faculty, of course, with staff. In that role, in the chair role, I oversee all of our curricula within the department and the artistic programming. Of course, there's the mentorship of colleagues, particularly colleagues who are being onboarded, who are new to our faculty team, the recruitment of faculty, of course, the recruitment of students. And then in my capacity as artistic director of the vocal arts department to help shape the artistic vision of the program, which ultimately informs the artistic vision of the division and the conservatory at large. Ours is a particularly comprehensive department for a conservatory because we're a bit anomalous because we have over 50 faculty members inside the vocal arts department alone, which represent all kinds of niche areas, right? Classical voice and opera and vocal pedagogy, choral studies, language repertoire, language acquisition is inside of our department, and just uh, yeah, I mean, there's just a lot going on. Our colleagues also support all of the applied instruction in the musical theater department. There are over 200 musical theater majors here, and we provide all the voice lessons for that division. So it's a wonderfully dynamic environment. As the interim dean, my perspective necessarily widened during that period of time because I spent much more time thinking about long-term strategy and budgeting, faculty development, institutional priorities. Interdisciplinary collaboration was a big area of my work there as well, across various divisions. Fundraising becomes an important piece, working closely with senior leaderships on initiatives affecting the entire division, not just a department. So when I've been asked this question, I've often described it this way, that I don't really think that these roles require different philosophies of leadership.
Hmm.
They just simply operate at different altitudes. One is immersed in the daily life of a department. The other requires a broader institutional perspective. But what both require, I would say, is really careful listening. You need to really be able to listen, building trust, communicating transparently as deemed appropriate, and always keeping students and faculty at the center of the work. They are the reason why we're here. And just like on a side note, like one thing I've really appreciated was continuing to teach throughout my administrative service. It is something that I wanted the moment I stepped in. I talked about that with my upper administrators, and I still remain in the Applied Voice Studio. I teach classes here. That's something that is at the center of my joy. Um, for me, I feel that teaching keeps me really grounded. It reminds me every day why the administrative work matters in the first place. It helps me to see things through the lens of the faculty, through the lens of the students. So that's been really helpful.
In as broad terms as you would like, um, what are some challenges you have felt uniquely qualified to tackle based on your portfolio of gifts, I like to call it, and what are some challenges that have been a little bit of a crucible for you that you've really felt like you've learned and grown from?
Crucible is an interesting word. That's a great word. It's a really wonderful question, David, because I think every leader eventually discovers that their greatest strengths are, I would say that they're often revealed by the kinds of problems that they are willing to sit with.
Yeah.
Um, One of the gifts that I think perhaps I've been given, is the ability to listen deeply before acting, to not just listen, but when you know that there's a decision that you have to make, that you take the time to pause, because we live in a culture that often equates decisiveness with speed, and we're living with relentless speed these days. But I've found that some of the most important decisions that I've had to make have really deserved patience. I can certainly move super fast. I can move quickly when circumstances require it. But whenever possible, I want to be able to understand an issue from every angle before making an important decision. And looking back, I think that that approach has served me really well, particularly in higher education, where very few issues are simple anymore. Institutions are really navigating all kinds of changes, changing enrollment patterns, evolving student expectations. There are a lot of financial realities at place now. We're also seeing rapidly changing technology. I mean, that is just moving at lightning speed. And there's an increasingly complex responsibility to support the whole student for all those reasons, not only academically, but artistically, but as developing human beings. Um, there are several reasons why students choose to go to college. And some of that, in some instances, has to just do with social emotional maturity. And those challenges that I talked about and described right now, mentioned, they are rarely one size fits all solutions. They are rarely neat and tidy. I've also found that my background as both a performer and as a teacher has shaped how I lead. Singers are trained to embrace complexity. You and I both know that. We spend our lives in interpreting questions that don't have a single correct answer. Teaching asks us to nurture potential over time. And leadership asks us to do both of those things simultaneously. Going back to that fun word, crucible, as for my crucible, I think that it's been learning that leadership often means, um, or sometimes means, I hope not often, but sometimes means disappointing someone,
Hmm.
even when you have done everything that you can to listen well and to make a principled decision. Earlier in my career, I wanted to believe that there was always a solution that would make everyone happy. But over time, I think that I've learned that that's simply not realistic. Sometimes there are competing goods rather than obvious right and wrong answers. I think that that's important for aspirational leaders to take away with them. I would say that in those moments, I've learned over time to try to anchor myself and my leadership in again transparency as deemed appropriate, um, consistency, and certainly kindness. You know, people may not always agree with a decision, but they should always understand that that decision was made thoughtfully and that it was made fairly and with a genuine ethic of care.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just say, I mean, leaders don't always have all the answers. Leadership, I don't think it isn't about having all the answers, but I do think that it's about creating an environment where good questions can be asked, where talented people feel as though they're thriving, and where trust is built over time. I think that's what people remember. That's certainly what I remember from those leaders that I really admired and looked up to. Um, I don't really remember whether every decision was perfect, but whether I felt heard. And
Yeah.
that's what I hope to leave those who I lead with. I hope that they have felt heard. I hope that they have felt respected, that they've felt valued throughout the process. I think all those things are really important.
It makes me think, as I was researching wholehearted voice pedagogy, came across this term intellectual candor as a way of expressing curiosity for what we don't know and for being in process when there's not a kind of binary
Mhm.
answer, right? And I think that's what I hear you kind of speaking on is being able to sit and to, as you said, be transparent and to talk things through and the trust that I would imagine that gets developed from your willingness to do that. Even if somebody's not necessarily happy with a particular decision, that the trust over time has to be consequential for future discussions.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes no doesn't mean never. Sometimes it means not now, or sometimes it means, we just have to wait a bit. So, great points, David. Yeah.
So there are several things that I see my colleagues who are in positions that have administrative or leadership roles within academic institutions facing, and
Mm.
one of them is kind of what I'll call balancing the machine of the institution with, as you said, kind of the commitment to serve the faculty and students. And I was just wondering what kind of things kind of come up for you when you're thinking about the balance of those two things. Again, it's not a binary thing. It's
Yeah.
a multiplicitous thing, right? So I'm just wondering what comes to mind for you in that.
I love that question. I might actually begin by gently reframing it because
Sure.
I don't naturally think of the institution as a machine. I know that some people do, right? As the machine, right?
Sure.
Um, I think of it as a community of people working toward a common purpose. Every institution we know has systems, has processes that need to function well. And unfortunately, sometimes they don't function great, right? Those systems, though, they should never become the purpose themselves. They're there to support the mission. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier is that higher education is navigating remarkable changes. I think we're in a remarkable period of change. Demographics are shifting. I mentioned how financial pressures, those are real technology, right? Students arrive with all different kinds of expectations and with different needs uh, than they did, I would say, even a decade ago. And I think there's consensus across that nationally. When I speak with colleagues across the nation, I certainly hear that. When I was the president of National Opera Association, we would hear that often. And those realities, they require really thoughtful leadership rather than reactive leadership. Um, that's something I think a lot about, just thinking, pausing, like what I had said earlier, versus like quickly jumping and being reactive. So, um, one of the things that I would say that I appreciate most about my institution is that our strategic conversations continually return to that same question. How does this better serve the students? Student centrality, whether we're talking about access or whether we're talking about affordability, student success, career readiness, career preparation, institutional sustainability. Those conversations, all those conversations ultimately come back to our educational mission. And for me, that's the balancing point. Every administrative decision has, of course, as we know, operational implications. They have financial implications. They have human implications. And really, as I've thought through those things, I've come to the realization that my responsibility is to hold all three of those, right? The operational, the financial, the human implications, to hold all three in view at the same time. If we focus only on operations, we may lose sight of the people that we exist to serve. If we focus only on aspiration without attending to sustainability, then we won't be able to fulfill that mission for future generations. That might turn out to be very, very costly. So I've found that perhaps the most effective leadership at this juncture um, hasn't been so much about choosing between mission and management. I think that it's about recognizing that good management exists in service of the mission. And so at the end of the day, I really still come back to the people and specifically to the students, to the classroom. That every meeting, every strategic conversation that's had, every budget discussion ultimately represents a student with hopes, with aspirations, with incredible potential. Keeping that student in view for me gives the administrative work its purpose. And again, I think it comes back to my history as a teacher, where I saw a lot of unmet needs.
Hmm.
Um, it's connected to the empathy piece. My empathy grew considerably over time, just hearing lived stories. Um, so that's what keeps bringing me back to the classroom, to the students.
For my entire teaching career, I've been adjunct faculty, which I've loved. My experience, though, is it can be challenging to create a unified vision in a program while still honoring each teacher's unique portfolio of gifts. And I'm just wondering, how do you build a coalition with a diverse faculty that have, as I said, different gifts? And how do you do that when, as you mentioned, you have 50 faculty, right? And probably not all of them even see each other in a semester. How do you kind of get everyone on the same page?
Yeah, I love this question because I think that through this question, um, you've identified one of the great opportunities in higher ed. Um, I would say like my starting point would be this, that a unified faculty does not require a uniform faculty. Because in fact,
Mm,
I would actually argue the opposite. The diversity of a faculty is one of its greatest strengths. And when I say diversity, I mean diversity in the broadest sense, right? Different artistic philosophies, different pedagogical approaches, different professional experiences, different areas of expertise, different lived experiences. And those differences, as I see it, and as I feel that our faculty see it here, aren't obstacles to overcome. They are assets. They are incredible assets to cultivate. And at Boston Conservatory, um, as I mentioned, and as you mentioned now, ours is a wonderfully comprehensive department. We have specialists in all those areas that I mentioned earlier, right? In opera and in art song and vocal peds, certainly, and choral studies, languages, and colleagues who support students across all those various disciplines, including musical theater. None of us, I would say, I can't think of a single faculty member here who's an expert in every single one of those areas,
Sure.
including me, nor should we be. What makes the department strong is that each person brings incredible expertise, deep expertise, while also respecting, and respect is the key word here, respecting the expertise of all their other colleagues. One of the foundational values of academia, I believe, is the ability to agree and disagree respectfully. Healthy intellectual disagreement, I don't think is a weakness. I think it's part of what allows ideas to evolve over time. The key really, I think, is creating a culture where people know that they are respected, even when they hold different viewpoints. And that also, I would say, that means being intentional about hiring. Faculty appointments are among the most important decision that an academic leader makes because students graduate, but faculty often shape an institution for decades.
Yeah.
It's not that alumni don't don't shape an institution; they certainly do. But faculties shape it in different ways. You're not simply hiring expertise when a national search is going on, right? You're inviting someone into a community. Excellence matters. Excellence in your approach to teaching certainly matters, but so does generosity and collegiality and curiosity and a genuine willingness to contribute to something larger than just one's own studio. Um, and of course, I mean, the practical realities are real. Many of our faculty are active performers, researchers, educators with really demanding schedules. We don't see one another nearly as often as we'd like. Certainly, I mean, we're an urban campus, and that's why we have to be intentional about creating opportunities for connection and collaboration. One thing that I especially appreciate is the respect shown to every member of our faculty community, whether someone teaches full time or part time, they're valued for the expertise that they're bringing and the impact that they have on students. And that culture of mutual respect, it goes a long way towards building a shared sense of purpose. And I've seen those same principles extend beyond my full time place of employment. During my years of leadership at NOA, our board worked really intentionally to cultivate a culture of belonging. We wanted people to feel that they mattered from the moment that they arrived, whether they were attending for the first time or had been members for decades. I believe that that culture of generosity and optimism and care for people has been one of the organization's strengths, and it's what has grown that organization exponentially in the last few years. So at the end of the day, I don't really think that people rally so much around a strategic direction plan alone. I think that they rally around trust. When people
Mm,
trust one another, when they respect one another's expertise, and they believe that they're working towards something meaningful together, then unity becomes much less about everyone thinking the same way and much more about everyone rowing in the same direction.
yeah. Makes me think in the last couple of years I've had the opportunity to co-teach with some of my colleagues, and there is nothing that sets me ablaze more than like, oh my gosh, I learned so much. It's just much as the student learned in that, because you have gifts that I don't have, and you have a vocabulary based on your lived experience, based on your performance experience as an artist that I don't have, and I don't work in that genre of music, but oh my gosh, I that's such a gift. And when we can uplift that and trust that we're all operating with the students best interest in mind, right? I that resonates with me very deeply.
Yeah, we love co-instruction here. In fact, one of the classes I teach is a co-instruction model, and we have various courses that run that way. If with the right faculty, with the right people in the room, it can be an incredibly rewarding experience and incredibly formative for the students.
Yeah.
Uh, because there's just, again, like speaking of diversity, right? I mean, there's a diversity of thinking that inherently happens through co-instructional processes. That's terrific.
Yeah. I'm wondering, as you said, you've continued to teach both in the classroom and in the studio, and I'm just curious what your experience as a leader, both at the academic level and in an arts organization, has taught you, or in how it maybe has influenced your work in the voice studio.
I might actually answer that in reverse because I think my teaching,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, I'll answer it in reverse because my teaching shaped my leadership before my leadership ever shaped my teaching.
Yeah.
Because teaching, came before that. I've always thought of myself as a teacher first. Long before I held a formal leadership position, I spent years working one-on-one with students, right, and helping them discover their voices and to navigate setbacks, to build confidence, right, to develop as artists and as people. And when you spend your life teaching, you quickly learn that every individual arrives with a different story, a different lived experience, different strengths, different fears, different aspirations. And that requires listening before speaking, right? Meeting people where they are and recognizing that growth rarely happens in a straight line. Those are leadership lessons just as much as they are teaching lessons. And part of what drew me into academic leadership was really the desire to help create the kind of environment that I wished more students and faculty had experienced throughout my own career. I mean, sadly, I was witness to moments where people weren't always treated with the kind of care or respect that I felt that they deserved. And I wanted to be part of building cultures where excellence and kindness could coexist, where high expectations and genuine humanity weren't seen as competing values. And one of the reasons that I've been so grateful to serve at Boston Conservatory is that I have found colleagues and leaders here who share that commitment. I've learned a tremendous amount from working alongside really thoughtful administrators who care deeply about people while never losing sight of academic and artistic excellence. Um, And of course, I mean, leadership has also greatly enriched my teaching. I mean, I could probably sit here for a really long time and just list the number of ways. I'll spare you and everyone listening that. Um, but through my work with the national organizations, and not just NOA, NATS, and other organizations, reviewing scholarship and conference proposals and artistic projects and various educational initiatives, sitting through those vetting processes on those committees that have looked at all those proposals, I've been exposed to an extraordinary breadth of ideas from colleagues across the profession. And that ongoing engagement, it keeps me learning. It's kept everyone who's sat in on those panels learning. And my students, our students, they benefit from that continual conversation in the field. But I don't really separate those parts of my life. I'm one person, and I don't have an administrator self and a teacher self and an artist self. Those identities continually inform one another. My performing shapes my teaching shapes my leadership creates opportunities for scholarship and mentorship, and my scholarship enriches all of the others. So perhaps what excites me the most, um, again, going back to students, is creating pathways for students to experience the profession beyond the classroom.
Hmm.
Just touching on that career readiness piece. So whenever possible, I really want students to participate in conferences. I was so happy because I just came back from the NADS National Conference, and we had several students who were there. We had many students attend the National Opera Association. We have students who go every single year to present at the Voice Foundation, to connect with professionals and professional organizations, to engage in different kinds of collaborative projects, and to begin seeing themselves not only as performers, but also as future leaders and as future teachers and advocates and colleagues. Um, I'd say, like, if there's one lesson that ties all of this together, um, I would say that it's that leadership and teaching are ultimately acts of service. They're acts of service. Both ask us to help other people become more fully who they are capable of becoming. And whether that happens in a voice lesson or a classroom or a faculty meeting, a boardroom, um, the purpose itself feels remarkably similar to me across all those areas. And so I hope that encourages people to think about that a little bit more. Um, we're all in it to help each other.
Oh, I love that answer, and I just adore you, and so grateful for this time to talk about this. Is because I think it's there's so much opportunity.
There
It's
really is. There really is, and there are still so many unmet needs, and no institution is perfect. But if you have um, leaders and colleagues and faculty members who you're surrounded by, who are um, excited to address those unmet needs, then that's already a starting place.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you so much for this time, Jess. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm wishing you all the best, David, on all those incredible things that you're doing. Thank you.
What did you learn from this podcast about leadership and about how leadership supports the work that we do with our students? Sound off. You can email me at wholeheartedvoicepedagogy@gmail.com, or you can find me on the socials. My handles on most platforms are at Sisco Songs or at Wholehearted Voice Pedagogy. Sincerely, I would love to hear from you. And as always, I want to encourage you to like, subscribe, and follow the podcast. We just have a very exciting episode coming down the pike that I don't want you to miss. The next episode is going to be really dynamic. More soon. Take care of you.